Hello, and welcome back to another Prandhara Prem YouTube and Facebook Live. I am so excited tonight. We're going to have a great show. I am here with Tatiana, aka the Trap Witch. She is an intuitive coach, transformative power coach, shadow worker, sexual empowerment coach, and she is the priestess of Oshun in the Lukimi tradition. So welcome. Thank you for being here today.
For having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here and get into some good, juicy conversation this evening because I know it's going to be good and juicy if it's with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just, when you came on, I felt your power. I felt your strength. It was like, whoa, I could feel that goddess energy. So thank you. Thank you once again for being here. And I see people are coming on. So let's get into it. So I wanted to start off with Jess, how did you stop? Well, first of all, before we get into the sexuality piece, you are a witch, the trap witch. So tell us about that. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a witch? Why do you call yourself a witch? How did that come about?
Well, I started calling myself the Trap Witch in 2000. I want to say it's 2016. And at the time, I was a sex worker. I was what we call, adult masseuse. I did tantric massage. And at that time, I was working in a legal business, because here in the United States it is very legal. I was making a means to an end. And that's when I really started having my spiritual awakening. And so at the time, I remember, getting into connecting with different, spiritual people constantly coming into my life, trying to awaken me. And eventually, I had a friend, because at the time, the Hood Witch was very popular. She's like, there's the Hood Witch, but you should be the Trap. Okay. And it kind of started off as a joke. She's like, you should just be the Trap Witch. And so I ran with it, and it stuck. For me, TRAP at the time meant take a risk and prosper, and which for me is woman in total control of herself. And at that time, I felt like I was someone taking a risk to get to a different point in my life and really taking control of my life when I had been in a victim mentality for a really long time and thinking that things couldn't manifest in my favor. So for me, I'm sure I had women in my lineage. On my mother's side, I'm, Jamaican, Cuban. My father's side, I'm Lithuanian, and I feel on both sides of my family, I had people who were in the occult. But at the same time, I'm the only person that I know of that openly practices in my family, which, has come with crucifixion at times, But yeah, that's how I kind of became the Trap Witch. And then as I walked towards the Santeria Lukumi tradition, and I embraced those roots of my Cuban ancestry, my life just started to transform. And so step by step, I took that seriously, and I made the steps to become an initiated priestess last year. And that's what my life has been become, helping people on their spiritual journey, and especially helping them transform parts of their life and moments in their life where they need to take risks to prosper, and they need to take back control of their life.
Yes, that is so beautiful. So when I was listening to you, it's interesting because I come from my family's Haitian, right? So I come from this Haitian background. And so similar to you, I'm the only one in my family or that we know of that's so much more open and vocal about this healing work, and I consider myself a witch too. So it's so interesting. And similar, my family was like, at first, but they're starting to open up, and now they're asking me questions, and they're starting to actually refer people to me to get healings, cleansings done. So it's so interesting to see that progress, see that change, and see people open up. And I think that it takes one person really to just kind of be you and be yourself and be that truth, and then other people will kind of in the family, other people will start to see either they'll accept it or they won't, and that's fine. Each person has their own path to go down, so yeah. So how did you, so you said when you got the name Trap Witch, you were a sex worker. And so how did that happen? How did you become a sex worker? So many people hear sex worker and they frown upon it, or they look down at it, or just kind of see it as something negative. But it's like, that's one of the oldest, prostitution is one of the oldest traditions there is, and there's many different forms of sex work. Mm-hmm. And I feel like sex work can be healing, to many people. So.
Well, it was interesting. I had graduated college back in 2000. What year did I graduate? Like 2007-ish. And I had started working a job, and then I was unhappy with it. And I remember like watching that movie Eat, Pray, Love, and I was like, damn, I wish I could just have one of those moments in my life. And I remember talking to my elder sister, and she's just like, that's not realistic. And I remember putting out to the universe, like, I really don't know where my happiness is. It's not in what I got my degree in. I feel like I'm struggling with finding purpose in that, although I've gone the right path. Give me something. And so I quit my job and I went back to a master's program. I dropped out, and I was really struggling to freelance, and things just weren't working in my favor in the graphic design arts department. And so I had a young woman at the time, was a friend of a friend, and she was actually a daughter of Oshun, and she became my friend. And she was just like, you're a daughter of Oshun. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what that means. That's great. But she was like, hey, I'm going to help you. Are you open to come to a job interview on Friday? And I said, okay. So she told me kind of a gist, and I was like, and so I went, and I kind of discovered this underbelly of a world that was like right there in front of our faces in everyday society. And it was a massage company, right, in broad daylight in a very affluent area. And I was presented with an opportunity to be very independent when it came to myself financially. And at that point in my life, I had struggled for a long time to do that for myself. And so I felt reservations around it. I said to her, I'm like, girl, I don't know if I can do this. And she said, well, what else are you going to do? Wow. And so I thought about it. And after, I remember I made probably close to $2,000 in about 3-4 days. I remember just being like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability until I know what's next. And what's next turned into 5 years, which was the biggest spiritual awakening of my life. But as a worker, and like you said, it's very much frowned upon. I didn't really have to do it. But when your back's against the wall and everything you've done right up until that point, go to school, do things the right way, doesn't pan out, you're put in a situation to be like, what do I do? So doing that was so empowering for me, because as a young woman, up until that point, I was disrespecting myself and not getting paid for it, in countless encounters with men who didn't respect me, and teaching me to be, when I became a worker, it taught me to put a price on my time. It taught me to put a price on my ashe. It told me to create boundaries. There were so many things that when I left that industry and I created my counseling business, and I looked at how I ran that business and how I ran this business, it was the same thing. And, people who aren't familiar with sex work, I was not someone who provided full service. I was not like an escort or anything. I didn't have to give sex. And at the same time, it's the same thing. People have to understand sexuality translates over into other arenas where I'm someone I have a lot of integrity. And so for me, I'm not just going to sell my soul for $1. So whether it's in the counseling, Bruja spiritual community, or whether it was the sex industry, I had integrity. I did my job well, and I did it a certain way. And it taught me a lot about respect and empowerment, although it was more, the shadow side of what an empowered woman should be to society.
Right. Wow. That was so much in there. That's really deep, and it's good to hear, because there's so many people who did the right thing, right? Like you said, went to school, they studied hard, they did so many different things, but then they're stuck. They're not able to find work. They're not able to make a living, not able to make money. And they're just like, what do I do? And it's interesting because for me, I got a master's degree in psychology. And my whole idea was to be a psychotherapist, have my private practice. And 10 years ago, I moved to Brazil, and then I became a tantric therapist, and I was in a closet for a bit with it. I was in a closet because I was like, oh, I don't know what my family will think. I don't know, it was just so many different things. But then I'm like, I'm a grown-ass woman. I'm a grown-ass woman. Why am I worrying about what other people are going to think, whether they're going to judge me, how they're going to judge me? And then I started making my videos on YouTube about tantric massage, and I actually showed myself giving tantric massage. And I remember my sister called and she was like, they're naked. And so I was just like, yeah, they're naked. She's like, what, she just had all these questions, and I just answered all of her questions, matter of fact. And she's like, okay. And she's like, well, why don't you come back to the States and do what you were trained for? You got a master's degree. And I was like, I love what I'm doing. Like, this is my path now. And I see that I'm healing so many people. And I think sometimes we get so stuck in, this is how we have to be. This is what society dictates for us. And I went to school. Sometimes we go to school just to please our parents or our family or someone else. And we're not happy. We're doing things that we're not happy doing. And
it's interesting when you brought up the point where your family's like, oh, they're naked. And I remember having, conversations even after I left that business of people said, well, were you naked? Were they naked? And I said, what's really interesting about this, and I guess this is a juicy part, is that if someone had a 1-hour massage with me, they were face down for 45 minutes. It was a very psychological experience for me. I knew all my clients by name, by scope sign. I knew where they were from. Whether someone came in and they were married, I'd ask them about themselves. I'd ask them about their family, ask them how their day was. And there's something that I once said last year about sex workers. I said a lot of women shame sex workers, but they don't know that sex workers are the closest things that their husband is going to get to a therapist. And because of that, and them dealing with their demons, you should thank them. Now,
say that again. Somebody needs to really hear that.
Sex workers are the closest thing some men are going to get to a therapist. And because they deal with their demons, the wife or whoever doesn't have to. And, for me, I was never a girl, because I think that there's a stigma around sex workers being desperate, addicts, et cetera, et cetera. I was never someone who was an addict. I wasn't desperate. I didn't want anybody's husband or their emotions. I just wanted to provide a healing service, for an hour. And so, I remember having this client for 2 years. He'd never talk to me when he came to see me. He'd just lie down there and sleep. And after 2 years, he said that he worked, a very intense job. He had anxiety. He's unhappy, and he finally felt that that was a safe space for him to come and kind of lay some of his shadows and lay some of his demons on the table so he could go back out into the world and function. Now, unless we are equipped to kind of take them through some of that work, they're only, reaching a certain point. But, I had people who were like, I remember having a gentleman who came to me and he was like, hey, I just had a biopsy for prostate cancer. Like, I don't know if I I have cancer, and I don't know if like I'll be able to go through X, Y, and Z afterwards sexually once I go through the surgery. And some of their spouses, we don't realize how some of their spouses don't have the emotional capability to hold that space. And
Right.
sometimes people are in emotionally absent relationships, and because people get married for sometimes what society thinks or whatever, they're not fitted with appropriate partnership. And so sometimes that escapism into the sex world for a period amount of time is giving them something supplemental to fill that void. Unfortunately, not enough people are taught to create that in a real partnership in their life.
Right. Wow. Wow. Yes, that is so true. That is so true. And when I was hearing you, in addition to that, on there's a whole nother end as well. There's people who come in who have social anxiety, social performance anxiety, all kinds of different things. So they're not dating, they're not able to get a partner, they don't know what to do, they have that touch deprivation. And so just coming there and being touched, having a massage, connecting to that sexual energy is just so healing. It's so healing. I remember I had a guy who, a client of mine, come to see me, and he had a lot of anxiety, a lot of social anxiety. Didn't know how to date, hadn't been in a relationship in maybe 10, 15 years. He was in his 40s, haven't had sex in over 15 years, And so I did this whole process of working with him through breath work, through guided meditation, visualizations, regression, and tantric massage. Every session we did a tantric massage, but in between we would do some of the talk therapy. I would have him do some different work, different things, and he was able to release a lot of that anxiety and that trauma that was within him, even that low self-esteem. And he got to the point of how, then we started working towards, okay, how do you meet a girl? Let's go on to Tinder. And I really worked him through all these different steps. Now, he actually has a girlfriend now. And before that, I even thought about it. I was like, he hasn't had sex in a long time. And I thought about, in my mind, okay, the next logical step would be to have sex with him, to like, in terms of a therapeutic way. We never got to that. I never did that, but I saw how that could be beneficial, and maybe that thought came to my mind because I had just read a book not that long ago called Women of the Light, and it talked about sex surrogates. And prior to that, growing up when I went to school, I never heard of sex surrogates. So I didn't know that was a thing. And so reading that, I was like, yeah, I could see how this could be a logical step in helping someone to completely feel comfortable 100% within a relationship.
Absolutely. And I remember you and I were speaking, and when I was in, I had a client who was concerned just for my safety, and he brought up that, he's like, you can actually become a sex surrogate, and you can go to school and you can get certified and do this legally. And, you can build couples through insurance, and people don't know about this, right? Because there's a loophole around it. But at the same time, people don't understand the psychology, I think, of some of these exchanges. And that's what's unfortunate, because people just hear the word sex, or they hear the word sexuality, and they just go, oh my God, because it's taboo, right? It's like we live, you've lived in America. I think majority of the world, sex sells, but let's not talk about it.
Exactly. So it's that whole confusion. This is why people are confused. And I really believe that this is what causes people to get raped, to get abused, because we're so into this thing that, oh, it's wrong, I can't do this. And we're so repressed that it leads people to being abusive, sexually abusing someone, calling someone horrific names, just being nasty to other people. If we could just really step into our sexuality, own it, and release the stigma, I mean, things would be so different. And this is why I do this every Wednesday. So every Wednesday, I have these lives where I have different people on and we're talking about sexuality, which it really is to create a safe space where people can share, feel heard, learn different things from different people and just really get rid of this stigma around sexuality.
Well, I think so many people are confused around sexuality because we're not taught that it's our life force energy beyond procreation. So yes, we use sex to procreate and create human beings, but at the same time, we use sexual energy in order to create everything that's in existence in our lives. So when people are confused at times, they don't realize that sexuality is also highly spiritual. A woman who's operating to me at the highest capacity of her sexual power doesn't have to take her clothes off. She knows what she wants. She speaks up about it. She doesn't settle for anything that is not that. And she does that because she knows her energy is precious. She knows everything she puts her energy into directly correlates to the manifestations, the abundance in her life. So when you talk about sexual repression, we're not just talking about people who aren't getting laid. We're having people who are just kind of getting fucked by life and not enjoying
Right.
orgasmic, beautiful, tantric life. And I think sometimes people too get confused about tantra because they limit it to such a physical thing when living a tantric life is so much bigger than just our flesh. It's our spirit.
Yeah. Yes, so true, so true, so true. And as you were talking about the sexuality being our vital life force energy, I think that's a part of, Ray said here, it's 2020. Why is it still taboo? And which you answered, and just kind of going even just a little bit deeper on that. I definitely feel like the powers that be, colonizers, all of this, they purposely repress the sexual energy because they know how powerful it is. So when you're talking about that vital life force energy, like you said, we're able to create the life that we want. It is the most powerful energy there is. So it's not just about creating life, giving birth to a child, but creating the life that you want. When you learn to work with your sexual energy, you start to manifest different things. So you hear about sex magic or, different things. But, in general, we learn how to manifest the life that we want. We're satisfied. And if we're satisfied, if we have the life that we want and we're in our power, we're not going to be depressed. They're not going to be able to push pills on us to basically control us like puppets. They're not going to, push all of these things to make us feel unsatisfied. Now we have to buy a BMW or a Porsche. Now we have to buy this Louis Vuitton bag, whatever. So it's about keeping us disempowered so that we're constantly wanting more, constantly feeling less than. So we're spending money, so that's a whole nother piece to this thing,
And when you were talking about, sexuality and procreation being not just giving birth to a child, but people forget that life is a child.
Mm-hmm.
Life is a child we give birth to, and we get to nurture it, and we get to love on it, and we get to raise it. And a lot of people are stuck, I think, at times in a stagnant inner child because their inner child is like dying to have its own life that they got to put together and they got to create and they got to manifest. And they're just so repressed. They're like, why can't I raise this the way that I want to? Because we're, I once did a webinar about spirituality and sexuality, and a lot of people don't realize that adolescence doesn't have an age of which it ends. It just says when you gain independence from your parents. So someone can be an 80-year-old adolescent because they're still living the life that's codependent on society and how their parents raised them. So that's why they're still acting in such, unevolved ways to meet the life that they wanted to cultivate. So, it's very interesting. Very interesting. And
so let's go ahead.
And as to say to you too as well, pills and things of that nature, and while I was in sex work, I was married. I got married during being in. I was also struggling with wondering if I was bipolar. I went and got diagnosed as bipolar. They started pushing pills on me and they stopped working. And I was like, I can't take any more pills. And so what I realized at some point later on was that I wasn't bipolar. I was spiritually imbalanced. I wasn't doing the shadow work that was necessary. I wasn't doing the cleansing, the purification to live a stable life where I wasn't spiraling up and down, ramping up and down. And, you know, also to say is that, again, going about doing things the right way, getting married, I rushed into marriage. And I will say this because I ended up cheating on him. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me because I had never cheated on anyone in my life. I never thought that I would. And when I got into the industry, I snubbed my nose at girls who had, you know, dealings with their clients. And here goes my hypocritical ass. I turn around, I get, you know, entangled with a client. And I realized that my entanglement of this really highly sexually driven affair was because I was in a relationship where my emotions really weren't all the way supported. My dreams weren't all the way supported. My mind wasn't all the way supported. And it really wasn't that I was sexually repressed in a physical way, but I was in a relationship with someone who was not going to be accepting of my sexuality in all areas of my life.
Right. Okay, so
go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, so I do want to go into that, the shadow work and being unbalanced, but I do have to read this first real quick. Okay. Tony wrote this funny thing. Tony wrote, this dude kept asking me for nude pics. And when I gave him a price and told him what he was finna spend, he then gave me some typical misogynistic speech on how I should value myself. I did, my nigga. I gave you a price. I thought that was so funny when I read that.
You know, everything is an exchange. You know, and think about this. Think about this, right? A lot of our grandmothers, a lot of our mothers were not told that when they enter into marriage, it is a business transaction and there is a price. So every time they're having a transaction in this partnership, are they getting really what their value is, what they're bringing to the table? A lot of them, they don't put their price, and the price doesn't have to just be monetary. The price is respect. The price is being valued. The price is being appreciated. The price is being honored for who you are as a being. So yes, it's okay to put a price on something because every transaction that we have in life, every exchange, we're providing currency, our energy, our time, our bodies, our minds, everything is ashe, it's spiritual currency. So if we're constantly giving it away without reciprocity, we pay the price later on. So many people are wondering why they're spiritually bankrupt, why they're unfulfilled, why they don't feel abundance in their life. It's because you don't put a price on something.
So true. Oh my God. So true. That is so true. So true. And I think men don't want to hear that. Men don't want to hear that.
Because at the end of the day, what we don't put a price on will cost us later.
That's true. That's so true.
You know, the value of your sanity, the value of your peace, when you're not putting a price on that later, when you end up bankrupt in deficit, you know, in the negatives, overdrawn, you're the one who has to take accountability for where you're not putting a price on the exchange in your life.
Right. Exactly. Wow. Yeah, Tony said men don't want to hear that as well.
You know, I will say this. We can't generalize men not wanting to hear it because that's why women have to be accountable. We can't say that because patriarchy has made women to not heard doesn't mean we don't speak up. You don't get what you want until you keep speaking up, and you don't settle until someone says, okay, deal.
Right. And Desiree says, I hate how men think it's okay to butter women up and take from them, but the second a woman puts a price on her time, it's a problem. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I would say that's like men are trying to get, like, for example, men will try to get you into bed, right? They butter you up to get you into bed. But that's where the logic of sex work to me has taught me something. Okay, if you're gonna get me into bed, what am I getting from it? Am I getting the relationship? Am I getting money? Am I getting whatever? So women have to start putting a price on something and figuring out if that man is going to match it up with actions and not just words.
Right. Right. Yes. Oh my God. Go ahead, girl. I'm learning some stuff.
What happens when you take sex out of the equation? I'm currently in a partnership, and I was celibate for almost 2 years, and before that I was celibate for a year, and I broke my celibacy. And my lack of accountability when I broke my celibacy the first time was me not asking for the contract and the relationship up front before I gave him my body. The second
What do you mean?
round,
What do you mean? Can you expand on that?
so I was working with this partnership coach named Shalom Melchizedek, and he said to me, a lot of women, where we go wrong is sometimes we believe that we can't get the contract. So we go ahead and we're jumping to the honeymoon without consecrating the marriage, right?
Right.
So he said, okay, you have your celibacy. If you want partnership and you want to wait to give that to someone who is committed and exclusive to you, get the contract first.
Yes.
Then consecrate it and go to the honeymoon. So the second time around with celibacy, I was saying to my partnership coach, I was like, yo, listen, I was like, my mind is telling me no, but my body's telling me yes. And he was like, you have to listen to your mind. It does not matter what your body is saying, listen to your mind. Now, if you want to fulfill the part of which the body wants, say what you want. And if the answer is no, you will not exchange. So sometimes women think that's risky, but it's like, if I'm going to let you engage me and give you something sacred, present me an offering, present me something sacred as well. And if the partnership and the union to you is the sacredness, why is that not an equal exchange for giving of yourself? Because I think so many women get upset. I've been talking to him for 9 months. I cook for him. I clean for him. I sex him really good. I do everything that a girlfriend should, but you're not his girlfriend. You're afraid to have that conversation. You're afraid to ask for what you want. And then when you're told what you want is unreasonable, you coddle him. You still kiss his ass. You won't leave him alone, and you won't put the boundary.
Yes. And do you, from what you see in your practice with people coming to you, is that based on fear? Like
Yes.
fear of losing him?
Fear and scarcity mentality. Because people think when they have found something, and I've been there so many times before, when they think that they have aligned with something, they think that's the best it's going to get.
Right. Right.
Sometimes spirit brings you to certain things that you want just to realize that you're not done manifesting. And so people are so scared to let go, thinking that God's not going to come through with a bigger upgrade.
Right.
And one thing Oshun has taught me as my spiritual mother is anytime she's taken something out of my life, the wait in between was worth the wait because it always came with an upgrade. But people at times are afraid to be alone. People are afraid to wait whilst doing important work. And they think that what they want is never going to come. So they settle.
Right. So they settle. So true. So true. So true. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And I see a lot of that as well, and in my personal life, I have refused to settle. I refuse to settle. And I have a lot of friends who tell me now, Renee, Prandhara, you men are intimidated by you. Like they cannot handle where you are. And I'm like, I know, and it's fine because I'm not going to be in a relationship with someone who, who doesn't meet me where I want, who's not giving me what I want. I know exactly what I want. And so that becomes a challenge too, like in a sense that I know what my worth is and I know what I want and I won't settle. you know, and it's like, I'm enjoying life and I'm doing me, you know, like I can't, you know, I can't settle. I can't be miserable. And even if it's like, even if it's meant to just be single the rest of my life, then that's fine, because I'm living in my truth and I'm doing exactly what I want. And I think a lot of women are afraid of that. A lot of women are afraid to be single the rest of their lives, or a lot of women are afraid to not get married. And sometimes it's not even because of them, but it's more because of society. They're worried about what other people are going to think, whether other people are going to think that they're not worth anything, or they're stupid, or there's something wrong with them. And so all of these different things in their heads force them to settle, you know.
Absolutely. You know, I think one of the common things that we get from I get from clients is like, the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. You know, they're putting themselves on this countdown. And I think a lot of them, sometimes it's not that spirit isn't aligning you with what you want, but I tend to see a lot of women flip-flop. They don't stay the course of staying steadfast to what they want. So they're constantly changing their mind back and forth. So it's like, oh, I want this, but because I can't get this, now I'm going to change my behavior and my attitude, and I'm going to go the other way again, and I'm going to contradict what I want. So in turn, sometimes we confuse the universe in us actually believing what we want. So that fear creates a blockage, that indecision creates a blockage. And one of the things that came up last year was, people don't realize like the spiritual path is a series of decisions, and what keeps people from their ascension, living their highest self with all the manifestations and abundance that they want, is often indecision.
Yes.
They're to make a choice.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's we're constantly facing choices every day, every day, every day, you know, and each choice that we make can take us one place or another, you know, and then sometimes we just have that indecision because we just don't know. We're afraid what's going to happen. You know, we want to know, okay, I want this result. And so now I don't know what choice to make, you know, so it's just, becomes confusing for some people.
You know, and I did a live yesterday talking about abodes in the practice of Santeria. And an abode is usually a sacrifice that has to be made. It's a prescriptive sacrifice to be made to bring about change in your life. And on a very simplistic level, people don't want to just make sacrifices in their life or change their behavior in order sometimes to bring about the results that they desire. And to get to the bottom of what has to happen, you have to, as an individual, diagnose what the problems are in your life,
right,
and then figure out the prescription and the healing work and the mending to get to the next level.
Yes, yes, yes. And so I take it you help people with that, right? You help people to figure out diagnose what the problem is, and to get to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what I find sometimes, it's not even that they're not willing to hear it. They're willing to hear it, but then it comes about the choice again.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do they want to make that choice? Do they want to take that risk? And that's why, you know, I say, like, taking that risk to prosper, a lot of people don't want to take the risk. And so if you don't take the risk, sometimes you miss the opportunity.
But that risk can be so scary. It can be so scary. But so I want to go deeper into, you know, you talked about at one point being diagnosed with bipolar, but it wasn't that you were bipolar, and it was you were spiritually unbalanced, and you had to go through that shadow work. So, you know, I can imagine, I know that there's so many people who are diagnosed with depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, autism, so many different things that may not be the case. It may or may not be. It could be a spiritual imbalance or something like that. So for you, how did that look when you were discovering that? Like, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's interesting.
So for me, in my early 20s, what I discovered was that I go through periods where I was extremely overproductive and very up, and then I would go through periods that were very low, and I was very sad. At first, I thought it was PMDD, actually, and then I went on birth control to kind of help that, and then I thought it was bipolar, and it was just like this kind of endless, like, well, let me figure out if there's something clinically wrong so I can have an excuse. And I honestly, and this is not to be ableist, but for me, I can admit now I was trying to create an excuse not to do certain work in my life, because if I gave myself that label,
yes,
give me a reason not to get better, because that was creating a crutch that I can go on this crutch and I can say, this is what it is. I can't change it. So, what I realized, and most people I think don't realize, is that introverting and then extroverting is very normal. We need to go within, go back out. And at times when I was going through those lows, I just didn't have the tools to go within to help myself. So essentially, now what I do in my sessions with people, I'm helping them. I'm going in with them. I'm like, okay, guys, we're about to take the ultrasound. We're about to go in. Okay, that's what's going on. I assist them through that. But as I'm assisting them through that, I'm also wanting to give them the tools to learn to do that themselves, because we all have to have accountability in our life. It's okay. It's okay to have a counsel. It's okay to have support. It's okay to have people around us that can assist us. But I don't believe in creating the codependence. So, just yesterday I had a client who, financially it's not a good time for her. We are going, we're in a pandemic, and she wanted to just follow up, and she said she was having a hard time. And as I'm someone who works with tarot and oracle cards, I work with cards for my divination. I asked her, I said, hey, do you have your cards? She goes, yeah, I do have my cards. And I said to her, I said, look, I want you to call in your ancestors of benevolence, your spirit guides, God, whoever your higher power is. And I want you to focus, and I want you to put a card on the left to address what's currently going on and you need to work through, and B, a card on the right to figure out a way to get through that. Sit down and meditate with that. Trust what first comes to you. And I said, for the next 7, 14, or 21 days, do not pull another card. Focus on that for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and trust yourself. Whatever through this time that you're going through, trust that's what you need to focus on, whatever they're saying. And if just and let's say theoretically she pulled a card on the left that said conflict, and on the right it said patience. Maybe the only thing that's stopping her through getting through this transition is her lack of patience with herself.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I like that you said don't pull another card for that time period, but 7, 14, 21 days. Because I have oracle cards too. And it's so funny. Sometimes I'll pull, and then I have like a few decks. So I'll do one deck and then I'll do another deck. This was before, right? Because it was like, even though I'm pulling it, I wasn't trusting. And it was a whole process to really get to that point of trusting.
Because we're never satisfied with the answer. And
right.
When I was most unstable in my life, I was doing that with friends. I was calling everybody, asking them like they were the cards constantly, over and over and over. And they could only give me answer or advice from their place of where they've healed, from where in their journey. And so then we don't realize that, are we getting the best advice that we need?
Right.
What about that person's conditioning? What about their wounds? Because you wouldn't go to a person who has had 5 failed relationships and who's bitter about love and ask them about love.
Right.
You wouldn't. So,
Although some people do. And they shouldn't. But yes.
No. So
Right.
yeah, getting to that point where we're trusting ourselves. And I think that's why our relationship with our sexuality is so important, because knowing your own power, knowing how you want to use that, knowing how you want to show up in the world and what you're willing to do in order to get to the things that you want to, that's very personal.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
for me, my sexuality is very bold. And we were talking about taking risks, and it's funny because I think a part of my like soul mission number that I read one time, it was like, you are the person who is here to take the risk that people won't, so you could tell them about.
Yes. And that's interesting. So you say that, because I think that there's so many of us who are healers, therapists, that's in this line of work. We are the ones, like the sacrificial lambs, right? That has to go through things to help other people, doing those things that the other people won't, that or are afraid to do or scared to do. And so many times, I have colleagues, and a lot of times all of us, we've been through so much crap, so much difficulties. And I have to remind them, or even clients, sometimes you go through these things so that when you heal yourself and you come out on the other end, you can actually help guide someone else, because you know what they're feeling.
Well, not to get biblical, but I tell people, like, to me, that's the story of Christ. Like, Christ just describes a spiritual journey. Like, he came down to fulfill a purpose. He had to rock the table. He pissed a lot of people off. He called out the bullshit. And guess what? They crucified him, but he rose again. And I feel like that's kind of like spiritual death. I think to me that represents going through, like many of us go through a dark night of the soul. We have to go through the crucifixion of society, our family. But like I said, not to get too biblical, but there's a verse that I really love that said, in order to be a follower of Christ, you have to be willing to go up against your family, society, etc. But knowing that you do that, you'll be delivered. So it's like, to me, that's just the story of like your spiritual journey, awakening and to fulfill your mission, and knowing that in that rebirth, you'll be straight. Like, okay, during your spiritual journey, you're like going to die a few times, but guess what? You're going to rise back up again.
Yes. Yes. I think so many people needed to hear that, because there's so much fear. There's so much, people are just afraid. They're scared to go through this journey, thinking that they won't make it through. They won't make it to the other side. And so it's so important to hear that you will, and it's trusting in your body, trusting in the process, trusting in the universe, trusting in the divine, your higher power, like you said, whether it's God, ancestors, being able to trust. And I think for some people, that's the hardest piece, though, is to be able to trust, because we want to be in control as people. We want things to go this way. And so sometimes we have to make ourselves vulnerable and let go,
I love this comment that Tony put that said, I heard a healer say Christ didn't die for our sins. He died because he was a threat to the empire. I love that, because I always tell people, like, Christ was a table rocker. Like, he rocked the table. He knocked it over. And he was like, society, this is what y'all are doing. This is some fuck shit. Like, that's that righteous anger. And I feel that a lot of times people are afraid to go through some of those rock the table moments, because they're afraid of the persecution and, what will people say if you go, people are zigging and you zag. It's like they're so afraid to fall out of the order. And we're like, we become like the cow that go to slaughter, And I remember when I was a child, I'll just share this with you. When I was a child, I used to have terrible dreams. Like, I used to have terrible, terrible dreams. Like, I'm like 5 years old, and I would always have this dream that I would get to church with my mom, and like everybody would just be dead on the stairs. And as I had got there with her, I would have to pretend to lay down and be dead too in order to survive. And now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, wow, that's some deep shit. Maybe that's why I never resonated with the standard of regular church, because maybe a lot of people do have to lay down and pretend to be dead just to survive, not,
Wow.
not going against the grain of what the structure is. And that's why for me, to really understand, I think church is a people. I think the spirit, higher power is in each and every one of us. And each and every one of us is going to commune differently. Because to me right now, we're sitting right now in communion. And God is within you, God is within me. And God created us with sexuality to procreate. And to me, to go and be fruitful does not mean just go and procreate human beings, but to put ourselves into the world and share ourselves amongst the world.
Yes. I love that you say that, because I had someone else say that God was polyamorous or something like that. I don't remember the exact way, but it was another lady who came on and she said something to that extent, because you know how God could love everyone and not just one person. So it just made me think of that when you said, we're meant to go out into the world and share ourselves. And so many times we have this thought, that we have to be in a monogamous relationship. We can't be polyamorous. We can't be with other people. Or if we want to be with other people, or we have other desires, that's wrong. We should only want to be with one person, and that's it. Once we get married or we find that partner, we shouldn't even have any urges to look at anyone else. And that's just not realistic.
This is the thing. It's healthy to be attracted to things, right? And sometimes, again, this is why understanding sexual energy is so important. Sometimes when someone's attraction is to something, it's not just solely fleshly sexual, it's energetically sexual, it's energetically attractive. So sometimes, when people want to do, have these multiple relationships with people, at times it's not because necessarily they want to engage just physically. There's an energetic connection. I personally, in my personal life, I don't want a polyamorous relationship, only because I know when people are not emotionally mature to handle multiple connections because they haven't done their work, it then becomes messy. It becomes an entanglement.
Yes.
Sure. But if people can come to the table and they know exactly what they're bringing energetically and how they wish to exchange that, that's grown ass folks. Mind your business and let them do them. I think that even people who wish to have more than one part, let's say you're married and you choose to have more of an open style relationship and you invite someone in, my only recommendation would be just be mindful of the energy you're inviting in.
Yes.
When we invite unstable energy, I had this conversation with a guy I was dating one time, and he was like, it's not cheating if you use a condom. I was like, just because you wear a raincoat and jump into the dumpster doesn't mean you're going to not get trash on you. Energetically, do you want to bring whatever state of mind that woman is in or what she wants into a healthy relationship? No, you don't want to come home with energetic trash on you, and then let it rub off and track into your home. That's my only opinion on it.
Yes, I agree. Well, let's get into Oshun a little bit. Look at me. So you're a priest, you're a priestess of a daughter of Oshun, right? So you're a priestess of Oshun. And I have this affinity for Oshun. When we were talking, I was saying that, I had this, I feel like Oshun would be my head, but then also Yansa or Oya is the name of Yansa. I've been told. So, but I do have a connection to both of those. A lot of people are not aware of Oshun. Well, more people are aware of Oshun now because of Beyonce. But tell us a little bit about that. How has being a priestess of Oshun affected your sexuality? What has that done for you? Like, and I ask a lot for me too, because living here in Brazil, I've been to candomblé ceremonies, which candomblé is similar to Lukumi or Ifa or Voodoo or Santeria. I haven't initiated in it, but I've gone. But I always wonder in the back of my head, and I know if it's meant to be, it will be when the timing is right. So I always wonder, okay, what does that do? How does that help you in your spiritual path and your growing? So I just want to hear a little bit about that from you.
So firstly, I want to share this with you. So for anyone who's also watching too, the Orishas are deities of West African Yoruba culture, and they represent energies in nature. So Oshun is connected with the rivers of the world, and the rivers of the world are veins. They're connectors, right? And she's also an embodiment of love. And think about how love connects so much in our life. But I think we're often so much taught about only one standard of love. And so for me, firstly, I'll say this. Also, too, I think there's confusion because a lot of people don't know that when you become an initiated priest of the religion, Oshun actually has many caminos. What does that mean? She has many avatars. She has many roads. So there's not just one version of Oshun, and you don't figure out which one you are until you become initiated and crowned. So my path of Oshun is Ibukule, which is the path where she's with the vulture. And so when people think of a vulture, they think of a dirty, nasty, ugly bird, bald, scavenger. It's associated with death. And so a lot of people associate her with just her path of the peacock. For me, I never had respect for vultures actually until I found out a bit about Ibukule. And when I started learning about Ibukule, and this is before I found out I was Ibukule, I started observing the vulture more, and I started to have more of appreciation for death and the shadow side of life, and how love and also death and the shadow are all one. So for me, and a lot of people don't know this, when we incarnate into this existence, we choose who our Orisha is that we want to walk this incarnation with. And for whatever reason, I chose Oshun because mainly I needed to learn how to love again in this incarnation, because I feel like whatever incarnations I've gone through before, I prefer living amongst the dead instead of living amongst the living. And that's why I loved Oya so much, because she was the gates of the cemetery. And every time I had a bad day before I actually found out I was Ochun's daughter, I would go sit with Oya. I'd just be like, Oya, I am just so over people. I'm just so over life. Just take them away. I wasn't suicidal, but I was just homicidal. I just wanted to kill everybody. I was like, and kill everybody when I say energetically, like I just didn't want to have anything to do with the world. I found solace in spirit. So for me in my life, Oshun has given me a chance to heal parts of myself that would much rather say it's just easier to go to the dark side and to operate from just the shadow. And so also people don't know, because the Orishas are energetic and they represent different parts of nature, one person is not just compromised of all one Orisha. So although I had that connection to Oya during a crowning ceremony, Oya said, Oshun is your head, but I'm your spiritual body. So as much as I'm Oshun's daughter and she took my head for healing in this lifetime, I am many more parts at times Chango and Oya, which can be very problematic. I used to struggle with my ego. I used to want to be angry. I used to want to fight. I used to want to just operate mainly in a lot of masculinity, which Oya is a more masculine feminine. And we know Chango is the epitome of masculine. So I had all this masculine energy. And so Ochun was presenting to me more divine femininity to balance me back out, to soften me again, to invite love into the crevices that had become a little hardened. And the thing is about Ochun, now not to say that Ochun is just all feminine and light. She's actually the most feared Orisha in the tradition. If you begin to sit down with real elders, they will tell you the Orisha they fear the most is Oshun, because when honey goes rancid, it's not good.
Wow.
So, she's actually the epitome of the witch. And as I sit with the elders and they talk about Ibukule, they're like, oh, Ibukule, the witch. So I'm Oshun's daughter, but I'm a very hot Oshun. And whatever my path of Oshun is to bring to healing in the community, that might be different than another daughter of Oshun, because I have a friend of Oshun who's Oshun in the rocking chair. She's the old lady in the rocking chair, and mine is not that. Mine's a little bit scarier, a little darker. So, someone said a lot of Mars energy. Yes, my Mars is in Sagittarius.
I think that's why I click with you so much, because we had that similarity in that sense. And I think I might have been telling you too that the guys that I'm always attracted to is that Shango. They had that Shango, and I have a lot of that masculine energy as well. And so that's one of the things that I had to work through a lot, was that anger and just and Oshun was coming to me a lot to learn how to be more feminine and connect to that feminine side. And Erzule Dantos as well, from the Haitian voodoo tradition. I don't know much about it at all, but I just kind of happened to learn a little bit because I was in the States once in, was it Miami or California? It's California. I was in California and ended up going to a voodoo ceremony by chance, if anything happens by chance. And it was the ceremony for Azule. And so there was a connection I didn't even know, and I wanted to buy the statue. And the priest, he was like, no, I'm giving you this. And then I researched, and he said who it was. And I was like, oh, she's the goddess of sexuality. She's a sexual goddess. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. This is my path. And it just really affirmed a lot of my work and, this path of going down sexuality. So these things are just so interesting. Like, I think that, in the US specifically, so many people are just kind of used to that, the predominant religion of Christianity right now in this form. And so we've been given so much fear that we won't experiment with other religions. Like, I remember growing up thinking voodoo was evil. It was negative. They're only killing or hurting people. But this is what, society, our colonizers, I'm going to keep using that because they still are, wanted to insert that fear within us, to not really connect to our roots and to this energy because of how powerful and healing it is. And so it wasn't until I came to Brazil that I could connect more to voodoo and candomblé and these African religions.
And whilst you were talking, I think what comes up for me, because I love Christianity. I am more of a Christian now than I was when I wasn't a witch. And I believe in Christ consciousness, but
I do too.
At the same time, I think what disconnects people so much is because they're not taught. I think because people think Jesus died for their sins, and that was the ultimate sacrifice. We don't think that we have to sacrifice in our own personal life. And Ifa and Santeria, Candomblé, all of these African traditional practices are very sacrificial, not just sacrificial in the sense that they do animal sacrifice or they give offering, but you become the ultimate offering and the ultimate sacrifice through changed behavior and following a prescription to live the best life as possible. Now, my reservations around sometimes Christianity is could be very contradictory. I remember when I was coming into more of the occult, and someone said, oh, well, the Bible says that witches should die and be stoned to death. And I said, yeah, well, the Bible also says that thou shalt not kill. So when someone's a witch or a source or whatever, then you get to play God. That doesn't resonate with me.
Right.
So, people don't know that, the book of Psalms is heavily filled with witchcraft. Like, there are things in there that's, wishing that your enemy's children be bastards and all sorts of things, of people don't question. And I think that's why when it comes to, even sexuality in your life, one way ain't the right way. And until you
Right.
question what's right for you, you will always be repressed.
Right. Yes. Yes. So, I was just about to ask if you wanted to like give us a nice little tip or something to kind of close off, but I think you just did it. And that's the biggest thing is to question, to
Yeah.
question, to question. And this was really great. Like you gave me a lot of things to think about, and even just in terms of Christianity, because I grew up Christian.
Mhm.
And I was very much going 5 times a week to the church, very much into it. And then as I got along my spiritual path, I left because I felt like there was a lot of hypocrisy. But it was interesting to listen to you and to hear you say this. So this gives me another way to look at Christianity and, you know, and we'll see. See what happens. So,
And a lot of us, our ancestors, they practice Christianity, and to honor parts of the practice that are righteous and honorable, and that have good medicine. That's not bad. I think that we forget that religion is just a tool to connect with the divine. They're tools,
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But the divinity is within you. Divinity is within nature. Divinity is all around us, and people don't know that voodoo means God is in everything. And as someone
Mm-hmm.
said, people equate sacrifice with literal death. Yes, they get so scared that sacrifice means literal death when oftentimes sacrifice is just needed for spiritual death over and over and over for us to ascend.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Wow, this is good. Like we could really keep going and talking for the next 3 or 4 hours. um, but yeah, we're gonna have to end. We're gonna have to end right now, unfortunately. This is good. But go ahead if you want to share your information for people who are watching.
Yeah.
If you have anything coming up.
Yeah, right now I'm kind of in self-care mode as far as events and certain things, but anyone who is wanting to work one-on-one individually, they can book a session through thetrapwitch.com. If you're just wanting to get more of my content that I post daily, it's going to be Instagram, The Trap Witch. I'm not so heavy on YouTube anymore, but hopefully maybe soon again. But yeah, I'm going to be planning some containers and offerings soon in the next few months. Just more intimate spaces like this where more women can connect and we can, witness each other and hear each other and get comfortable with using our minds and our throats openly, and that becoming a new standard. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'll make all my announcements on Instagram about those offerings if you're interested. So I appreciate you having me on. It's been an honor, and I deeply appreciate it, and I know we'll do it again.
Yes, yes, yes. It's been an honor to have you on. So I'm so grateful. This was amazing. I love your energy. I just want to thank everybody who's been on, who's commented. Thank you all. If you have not subscribed to my channel, subscribe. If you really enjoyed this conversation, please share it. Share it with your friends, family, sisters, brothers, because they'll get something from this too. This was very, very informational. And so you can follow me as well on Instagram at Prandhara Prem _Tantra. Twitter or Facebook is Renee Adolph. And I have a Patreon if you're interested in doing more work with Tantra on my Patreon /Prandhara Prem. I do self-exploration Sundays, Monday meditations, and Tantric Tuesdays. So I'm constantly giving information every Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Then my website, you can check out my upcoming events at prandharaprem.com. I will actually be starting on Monday, a Tantra sound healing course, sound healing and breath work, which is a 4-week course. So go to my website and check it out if you're interested in joining. And so that's it. Well, thank you so much. Tony says merci. All right. Well, thank you everyone for commenting and being on. Thank you, Trap Witch.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Have a good night. Bye.